We were talking about this coaching staff, and he was basically just asking me, okay, what are the priorities for Michigan football this spring? What are you looking for? That sort of thing. And I got to say that of course, it's ingenious because it just won a national championship and it's owned the Big Ten for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But what Jim Harbaugh was able to do back in 2020 in forming this coaching staff and restarting, resetting, and maybe the COVID year was in some way a blessing. Not that I thought the backlash against Michigan football and Harbaugh was way too extreme. I became a Michigan, and not so much a Michigan, more of a Jim Harbaugh apologist of sorts for about a year and a half to say, whoa, hang on here. This guy, look what he did at Stanford. Look what he did with San Francisco 49ers. Look what he did here with Michigan when he first got here. Hang on. The guy knows what he's doing. Just pump the brakes on that. They just went 9-3 and played Alabama in a bowl game. You know, it's not the end of the world. And what he was able to do is bring in this coaching staff. And one of the things I was amazed with, if you recall, and I'm sure you do because you know the team like the back of your hand, is that in that 2021 season, before it was all unproven at that point in the spring, most of those coaching additions came in like days before spring practice. It wasn't like they had a month to get together, plan out the spring, go to it. He was bringing them in right as spring practice was starting, and they were able to mold and gel together and, of course, take off from there.
Yeah.
And now the blueprint is, starting with the head coach, of course, is let's continue with this network that we've built of people that have worked together, that understand the Michigan brand, that have a connection here, and we don't want to let go what we've built.
Right. Yeah, especially bringing in Wink Martindale.
Yeah.
And bringing in Brian Jean-Marie, right? And then, you know, the analyst that they just brought in, Kevin Wilkins, who is formerly of Baltimore and the Giants and worked with McDonald and Minter. So there's no question they're just moving forward with philosophies like they previously had. You know, the Greg Scruggs hire that they just did, taking him from Wisconsin, was a major get in terms of maintaining recruiting pipelines in the Midwest, because we lost that with Klingscale. So you're seeing a lot of smooth transition in a way. I mean, I'll tell you what though, Mark, it was a hard month of Harbaugh just snatching guys left and right, you know, and it was very drawn out. I mean, even today, we don't have everybody fully announced, like who was our defensive coordinator, or I'm sorry, not our defensive coordinator, but our defensive back coach, Lamar Morgan. He still hasn't been officially announced yet, so he can't even recruit. So we're not even at full capacity, and it's March. So that's one negative right now. But outside of that, everyone's been announced, everyone's official, and you know, I think the good thing is there is familiarity with the scheme. You know, because Brian Jean-Marie was here for Mike McDonald's first year, and or first 2 years, I think, or let's see, definitely the first year. And you know, I think we'll see a smooth transition with Wink Martindale, and I think. And the good thing, too, is, you know, I'm sure you've looked at the roster. You seem to be pretty tapped into Michigan. You know, we're bringing in a lot of talent. You know, we got Will Johnson coming back. We got Grant and Mason Graham and et cetera, all the edge guys. So it should be an elite defense next year. I actually think it'll be a top 10 defense again. I don't think there'll be a letdown. I think the concern is, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is obviously quarterback, wide receiver. And some people probably would be concerned about the offensive line, but I'm not. I think offensive line is going to be just as strong as it's been. I mean, I don't actually expect a step down due to we have two transfers, being Prevey from Northwestern and then Miles Hinton, who was previously from Stanford, who was already on the roster for a year. He's going to fill in at left tackle. And then the other three guys who are going to step up on offensive line, they've been developing for 3 years. They've been in the pressure cooker. So, you know, I think the team's going to be strong. I think there's going to be a smooth transition with the coaching staff. And I'm actually really excited with the hires that Sharon brought in. I think he did a really good job with that.
Yeah, I think basically what they've done is Sharon has followed the blueprint of Jim Harbaugh. And again, they're trying to keep this magic that they've got bottled up and keep it going by having very familiar faces and connections in place and continue to draw from that Michigan chain of sorts. and you basically eliminate the variable. So we truly don't know how this coaching staff is going to operate, how well they're going to gel, but the risk has been minimized down to about that much. We pretty much do know, and every coaching staff across college football changes every offseason to a certain extent. So you try to, of course, eliminate those negatives you've had. So every coaching staff is changing, and they've changed for two reasons. Either you have let people go to say, you're not getting the job done, you're gone, we're replacing you to upgrade, or, we lost somebody really good and we got to try to maintain and get somebody just as good. Now, Michigan, the positive is they're winning championships. The negative is they're not kicking people out the door because everybody's doing the job. So they're losing good people and just trying to maintain what they had.
Right. But, and they're also promoting within, right? So you got Grant Newsome, promoted from tight ends to offensive line. You got Kirk Campbell, who's now the offensive coordinator. So, one of the, 5 stages of leadership is developing leaders, right? So you're seeing that within the program. And I think, I think that's really key. I think it's really fruitful for the university. And, I'm just really encouraged with the staff. I mean, in the beginning, it was actually getting a little hectic because we were swinging and missing on some defensive coordinator options. But, getting Wink Martindale, I think a lot of Michigan fans are pretty happy about that. Some people have a fear that he's Dr. Blitz and he's not going to run cover 2 or cover 3 or anything, but that's not actually the case. If you look at the numbers, me and John, we discussed it, and by opponent is how coverages are designed with Wink Martindale. Sometimes he's more cover 2, cover 3, but sometimes he'll cover 1 and he'll blitz more. But I just think I think so far Michigan has passed the test. I think the next test for the university or for the football program is recruiting, spring practice. We have a big quarterback battle coming up that I think has a lot of question marks, and that's where the real concerns are going to be, for the program. And we're just going to have to see how things play out this spring.
Hey, TJ, back to Sharon Moore, because we're seeing a national championship team not bring back its head coach for the first time since, I believe, Tom Osborne retiring in 1998. So that's been a long, long time. And so that's just a different dynamic that this program's facing that hasn't been seen in a long time. Eventually, Sharon Moore is going to be his own man, do his own thing. But obviously, he would be a fool to try to change too much. The system works, and he's lived it. He's been part of the success, of course, a huge part of the success. But have you seen anything out of him that leads you to believe, okay, this may be a little different under him, or that might be a little bit different, or is it too early to tell at this point?
Well, I definitely know off the field things are going to be different in terms of recruiting. I mean, he's already said he's going to widen the scope. He's going to look at players that previously wouldn't have been Michigan guys. Culture fits, under Harbaugh. So we do know that's going to expand. We also know NIL is going to be a little bit more aggressive. Now, I don't fully know what that's going to mean in terms of are we going to actually start paying high school players, because we do pay our own players. Like, that is obviously what we do, but how far are we willing to go? I've heard speculation that we do think we're going to be a little more aggressive in that area, but until we see the results landing top 100 guys, I just, it's to be seen. But in terms of on the field, I do actually think it is too early, right? Because everything's talk until you get on, it's like Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. So I think, we'll have to see when we hit the field if things really change. But I do know with Kirk Campbell being offensive coordinator, they do want to be a little bit more aggressive with the pass. Now, I do think the run game is going to still be our base and our foundation, but I think you could see the playbook opened up. I think that's going to be the case there. And then defensively, though, I think you're going to see a lot of similarities. I mean, just an aggressive, tough, smash-mouth football team. I mean, that's the bread and butter, and I don't think they're going to get too far away from that. I just think you might see the offense be a little more expanded. But that's really going to come down to the quarterback, because if you don't have the weapon, you're limited in what you're able to do. So, that's kind of where we are with that right now.
So, TJ, back to the recruiting comment about Sharon Moore broadening the scope and not necessarily just going after a Michigan-type student athlete. I'm thinking of that two different ways, and you tell me which way I should be thinking. One would be, okay, we don't always go after all the 5 stars. We're not fill in the blank 3 or 4 other schools in the country that just feel like they can go anywhere at any time and have a shot at those guys? Or is it more, okay, we want a particular type of background at Michigan? And I'm not saying this in a snobbish kind of way, but we don't want to have any issues off the field in their background. We're not going to take chances on an elite athlete if they've shown any kind of issues in school or anything like that. And obviously there's a zillion of those guys that have cleaned up their act and been great NFL stars, and certainly learned, because we all have done stupid things when we were that age. So am I reading into that? In a way?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think sometimes they would stay away from top 100 guys, or maybe even 5-star guys, because they know that there's a price. There's that comes with, you got to write a check, right? I think Sharon's going to be more aggressive in that area. I also think there is like a culture thing, right? Because if you remember, in 2017, Harbaugh had his best recruiting class ever, which was a top 5 class. But if you also remember, majority of that class transferred out. And that really hurt him in that 2020 season, because those guys would have been juniors and seniors, right? So that was one of the, outside of hanging on to Don Brown for too long, right? Which was a major issue. But the other issue was there was not true seniors and juniors. They were very limited in that area. We were a very young team in 2020, which you saw that young team grow and become national champions. Or Big Ten champions, right, with Aiden Hutchinson and such. But I think what you're going to see is, I think because the culture is already instilled in the program, that Sharon's going to feel a little more comfortable maybe getting the player with maybe some character concerns, right? Maybe he has had trouble, and they're not just going to turn him away like they used to in the past. So I think you're going to see that mixture. I mean, we haven't fully seen it yet, because like I said, the recruiting staff hasn't been at full capacity yet. So recruiting's just now starting to pick up. We didn't do any junior days in January, so we really missed out on that. So March, we're starting to get visitors, and we're gonna see what transpires. I'm looking forward to it.
So TJ, you hit on something that I love, these kind of nerdy things. So here's the 2017 class right here.
Yeah.
Obviously Donovan Peoples-Jones, wow, took off in the NFL. He's doing just fine for himself.
Yep.
Hooking up with CJ Stroud there. Aubrey Solomon, he turned into a player.
Yeah. Yeah, but he transferred, went to Tennessee.
Yeah.
Luigi Villain transferred. He had injury problems, though. Oliver Martin went to Nebraska. Well, he transferred twice. He went to Iowa and then Nebraska. Cesar Ruiz, first-round draft pick.
Yep.
Ambry Thomas worked out.
Okay, that's what I was thinking of when I saw Solomon there. Ambry Thomas, yes.
Yeah, and then Benjamin St. Juste, he transferred to Minnesota.
Yep.
Drew Singleton transferred to Rutgers. We lost all these guys, man. I think James Hudson went to Cincinnati and turned into a stud. I think he became a first-round pick. Yeah, all these guys. Tariq Black had foot issues. Nico Collins turned into a stud.
Yeah.
And then, the Dylan McCaffrey hype, that didn't work out.
Josh Ross.
Yeah, Josh Ross worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, Dylan McCaffrey. Where did he wound up, like at Rice or somewhere, or Colorado?
Yeah, he transferred to his dad's college in Colorado. It was like
something military. Yes. I don't know what they do. And Andrew Stuber, he played a little bit, right?
Yep, he stayed.
Yeah.
He turned into a starting offensive lineman. He got drafted in the NFL. And then Quiddy Pay down there.
Yeah.
That was and then Brad Hawkins actually just became a GA.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay. Yep. I just saw that.
Yep. Absolutely. So see that class had a lot of guys with attitude issues. And there was a big culture problem with the program. There's a lot of locker room issues.
Ben Mason was a good player.
Hell yeah. Yeah, he was a great player. He got drafted by the Ravens. Yep.
And
Brad Robbins also got drafted.
Yeah, you don't put punters and kickers in with the rest of them. They're always going to be at the bottom. But Brad Robbins obviously was really good. Yeah. So on the surface, it didn't look like that class burned them that much. There were a lot of good players that stuck around.
Well, I mean, actually, but the top of that class, they all transferred out, right? So majority of the top guys, see the guys who stayed, so like your Quiddy Pays and your Andrew Strubers, those guys were your 3-4. That's the Iowa plan, Mark. That's you find the diamond in the rough, and then you develop them, and then you turn them into draft stars. That's your, You know, it's like we just got Sam Laporta. He was like a 2-star. They got him from what was it? Bowling Green. Iowa got him from Bowling Green. So yeah, so you know that you just can't. I think Harbaugh learned from that class. A lot of guys with attitude issues. There was a big culture problem in the locker room. And, you know, ever since then, he changed his approach. Ever since the 2018 class. So the 2018 class is the one with Aiden Hutchinson. And that class was actually one of his lower. I think we only had 8 4-stars, possibly 9. But it was a very low blue chip ratio class. And that's the class that won as seniors our first Big Ten championship. And then from that point forward, he started recruiting a different caliber player, which was more of a, I guess you could say, a Michigan man. It took less chances, you could say.
Who's your favorite player of all time? Michigan player.
Chris Perry. Chris Perry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 2003 in particular. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember watching him play, and he just ran with so much heart. You know, I loved Chris Perry, man. Yeah, he was the man.
You have a favorite player right now?
Right now? Yeah, I mean, probably Will Johnson. I mean, I think Will Johnson's a stud. You know, he's hard not to love. You know, my favorite player recently was Aiden Hutchinson, though. Dog. You know, just a savage. You know, played with all heart. Now he's on the Lions, so like I'm thrilled. I get to watch his career. But yeah, right now it'd have to be Will Johnson. Although I'll tell you, I'm ecstatic about some new kids coming. I think we got some young talent that's going to be, you know, household names, just like, you know, the guys we previously mentioned.
Considering what this Michigan secondary looked like in 2020, let's say, versus we all saw Will Johnson. We knew it was coming. We knew he had that kind of talent. So obviously he already had the spotlight on him. Then during the back stretch of 2022, he was showing us, okay, this guy is on the move and he's going to be what he was set out to be. And then Sanders still obviously gets moved from offense to defense. And early this season, I thought this is the best tandem quarterbacks in the country, not just because of their coverage skills, but because of their ball skills. Like Sanders still made interceptions that I thought, my goodness, he's tracking the ball like a wide receiver.
Yeah, right. Because he is, right?
Yeah. That's what he was.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Josh Wallace, right? I mean, Josh Wallace was the other outside corner, and he's going to be drafted. I think he's a pretty talented. He had a good combine, ran good numbers, but yeah, I mean the DB room really upgraded from the previous years. You know, especially on the outside corners. You know, plus the scheme. I'll be honest, the scheme helped it a lot, right? Because they started disguising coverages instead of leaving their men on islands, and you know, we really got exposed in those Ohio State games with the crossing routes and you know, the flat routes and all that. But you know, I think
back in the good old days.
TJ. Yeah, I bet for you. But yeah, they're great now though. Days are amazing these days. But I mean, the DB room now it's a healthy DB room. You know, I mean, I think going forward, even, you know, after Will Johnson, we got a lot of talent. So, you know, we should see a lot of continued success in that area.
Do you have interactions with Ohio State fans?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Yeah, I mean, especially on Twitter. I mean, I'm clashing with them constantly. I mean, sometimes you'll find some good Ohio State fans, but a lot of them just want to, you know, talk shit all the time. You know, just say the most crazy. You know, I mean, I've seen you complain about. Absolutely. I see you talking about you know, different fan bases from Notre Dame to others. You know, like you got those types of fans out there who like you could post something so innocent and they'll just be like, oh, cheaters. The cheaters from up north. It's like, oh God, here we go. You just reported 4 minor violations, but we're going to look past that.
Yeah. Well, my approach to that this season, and I hope people understood where I was coming from and respected it. And I think based on the contingent of Michigan fans that we have, they understand when there was news coming out, when it came out, I covered it. I discussed it. I didn't go to either extreme to say this is nothing or this is the worst thing in the world. And then once we had our last bit of evidence, once we had the last bit of that situation, once we got to those final 3 games and Sharon Moore took over for Harbaugh, and that was pretty much, you know, the Big Ten doing what they felt was right. You know, I basically said, we're not talking about this anymore until there's a final judgment on this. There's no reason to talk about it because there's no more new information. So it is what it is. They got a great team. And here we go. We'll see what they do.
Right. Yeah, and like, I mean, plus, at a certain point, there comes a point where teams are changing. Let's say we had signs, right? Teams are changing their entire systems. When you're playing against Ohio State or Penn State or Alabama, Washington, like, and we saw how extreme it got with the playoff hype or the playoff preparation, right? The guys weren't even using their tablets anymore, right? Which is a whole different, I guess, situation with the whole tablet hacking or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think, as the NCAA president said, we want it fair and square, which, I mean, we did. I mean, we flat out did. I mean, did things happen previously? I mean, I'm sure they did. I'm sure when the NCAA rules on it, which they haven't yet, we'll see what transpires. But I mean, the interesting thing now is that Harbaugh is gone. I'll be honest, I'm not expecting much of a punishment in that area. Plus, what's really interesting is they still can't find a link with Stallions and CMU. That where he's that picture of him on the sidelines, they can't.
Yeah.
From what I've gathered from some insiders, they have no NCAA still doesn't have an answer for that. So that'll be interesting to see what they do with that. But I mean, moving forward, it is what it is. I mean, the beautiful thing is we won the national championship. So what are you gonna do? Nothing you can do about it now. We won the title. We reached the mountaintop, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and I, for one, certainly when I first heard it, thought I go in two different directions. For the good of college football, I want nothing to be there to be nothing to it.
Yeah.
Regardless of what team it is. I want the competition to be fair and all of that. But obviously, whatever happened. And if it did happen in such a way that it was egregious cheating, then I want justice to be served one way or the other. And so we'll just see what they come back with. But I don't expect it to be much of anything because I think we've seen everything we know about this situation.
Yeah, I agree. I'd also say, though, to touch on, I'm not saying sign stealing doesn't have an impact because, I mean, obviously there's a benefit or you wouldn't do it, right? But, we're in an era of college football that is so damn gray. And teams are pushing the limits so far in so many different areas, right? You have the portal, you have tampering going on like no other, right? You have players being bought like never before, making the 80s blush, right? I mean, I just think we're in an era where I don't know who is playing clean. I'm not saying that cheating or sign stealing is, so what, it means nothing. But I am saying like everyone's pushing the limits in every direction. It's just who's doing what, right? So I don't look at like our run any less than what it was because I simply think there are so many damn programs pushing the limits in so many areas. It's it's like who isn't pushing the limits, in all different facets. And I think acquiring talent is far worse than stealing signs. Like, I think if you're poaching kids or if you're buying recruits, I think that has a greater on-field impact than signs. Personally, not to say that sign stealing again doesn't have an impact. Obviously it has some benefit, but if you're getting the top talent in the country, you can do more with that than you can with signs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know what cheating is though anymore in terms of player acquisition, especially since the NCAA came out with this thing this week where they're like, our hands are off of this because we're losing every court battle in sight. So it was inducements before, but now they're saying, well, inducements are fine.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be so interesting to see how the summer plays out. I have no idea what to expect, I mean, it's going to be nuts. Cause I mean, there's no limit now.
Yeah.
So who knows what to expect? That's why there needs to be some type of resolution with the CBA or something. But I think we're years away from that, maybe 2 to 3.
Yeah, I'm going to be formulating some kind of video here in the next few weeks if I can put it together in my head where I'm putting together some kind of future college football world that's realistic, that's not going back to 1955 because that's just never going to happen for as much as I would like it to be yesteryear and student athletes to be true student athletes and all of that other business. But they deserve to be paid. They're Americans. It's a capitalist system. They just deserve to be paid. That's all there is to it. I think it's causing a lot of problems and it's bad for the game in terms of the player movement and all that. But we cannot prohibit free citizens in this country to be able to have the same rights that everybody else has. So
yeah, it's pay for work.
It is.
That's what it is. It's pay for work. You know, that's exactly what it is. I mean, these kids it is a job. You know, I mean, I understand this, you know, I brought this up before on the show, but like, you know, I know the scholarship is a thing and it does matter and it does have value, but there's also more to that. You know, how much is the employee, we'll say the athlete, the employee, how much money are they bringing to the university or the athletic department? And the reality is they're paying for the athletic department. So there's no reason they shouldn't be compensated for their talent.
Well, that's what I would love to see the math on. I would love to see the math, because think about this, TJ. If the average college football player going forward is going to make, we'll just pick a number, $100,000 a year.
Okay.
First of all, I don't know how they're going to manage the locker room in terms of, does everybody get $100,000 a year? The long snapper gets $100,000 a year. The star quarterback gets $100,000, or it's going to be all over the place. And who's going to determine that? What your right guard's worth versus your quarterback versus your backup outside line? Like, for wow. Okay. But anyway, let's say it's $100,000 a year. You got a roster of 85 scholarships. You've got an $8.5 million payroll.
Right.
I know places like Michigan, that's fine. They cover that easily through Big Ten money and everything else that they've got going on, merchandise, etc. However, how many programs across the country can sustain that? And are they going to share the wealth to sustain the whole league? Or what are they going to do? All those things need to be worked out, because you're talking about 70 power conference programs with $8.5 million payrolls. That's $600 million. Is the sport clearing that much money?
Yeah, well, I think what you're going to see is, and we're seeing it, is you're going to see these super conferences, which are occurring as we speak, right? And it's going to be the haves, have-nots, right? So the 20 teams in the Big Ten were 2 away, and then you're going to have the 20 teams in the SEC. And, you know, those are going to be the ones who can afford that $8.5 million payroll. But I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, Mark, you know, I'm hearing rumors that some of these payrolls are 15, 20 million. You know, you got some of these programs paying 15, 20 million. Right. So, you know, I think it will, you know, work itself out. You know, you kind of touched on, you know, what player is going to make what. Well, the market's going to decide that, right? What programs can afford to pay the backup or third string guard however much money it is, right? You know, the TV contracts are going to determine what these programs really can do, because they're the ones who are, you know, paying for the, you know, the entire athletic departments and what their budgets. So, you know, I just think you're going to see that the Big Ten and the SEC, and then I know I've seen you've had some shows on, you know, what's going to happen with the ACC and you know, maybe the Big 12, but, you know, I think you're going to see that the SEC and the Big Ten are just going to be in a position where they can afford to pay more. And then I think you're going to see some of the lower programs, like a group of 5 programs, you know, they're just got to be in a different division with a different set of rules in terms of paying for players. Sure. You know, because they're all operating in the red. They don't even make money.
Exactly. You know? So nobody's going to get paid anything unless NILs want to give the quarterback at Kent State money. That's fine. They should be allowed to do that. But in terms of, the system generating money for the MAC and the Sun Belt, no. Right. They're not making that kind of money.
Even with the TV contracts, they're still in the negative. You know, like schools like I'm in Michigan, right? So schools like Eastern Michigan and Western and Central, I mean, they're not operating in the green. So, I just think you're just going to see a real change in the landscape.
Absolutely. Great stuff, TJ. Appreciate you being here. Before we let you go, you may have this conversation in future weeks with John, but since I probably won't be here, would love to know what you have to say about spring football in regards to, you know, what are you going to be looking out for? Of course, the quarterback position is first and foremost, but, you know, what are you looking out for? Who do you think that could be, whether that's a 2024 signee or it's somebody that's been on the roster for a year or two kicking around as a backup that could break out this year?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you know, the quarterback position is the battle of battles. And I will say this, Mark, I think our answer at quarterback is not on the team. I think we will be portal shopping. Although, you know, we'll see, does Alec Orji get accurate? I hope so. Because if he does, then it's going to be a great time in Michigan. But if he doesn't, then we have a lot of work to do, and we're going to be poaching and tampering like everybody else. But yeah, so I think, we saw Samaj Morgan start to really shine towards the end of the year. I think he's going to be one of those sophomore breakout players. I think we're going to see that. A tight end to look out for because, AJ Barner is moving on to the NFL is Marlon Klein. He's your next name to watch. I fully expect him to really take a leap next season. And there's already a lot of good reports from winter conditioning and things of that area. But Giovanni El-Hadi, I completely agree. I think Giovanni El-Hadi, along with Greg Crippen, are really going to be cornerstone players for that offensive line. Like I mentioned earlier, you got Miles sitting at left tackle and Josh Preby at right guard. And then another one to, like I said, that offensive line is going to be strong. Andrew Gentry at right tackle. He was a top 50 recruit coming out of high school, but he went on one of those Mormon missions for 2 years. I think it's going to be his opportunity to be at the right tackle. And I think you're going to see him really shine. And then the defensive side of the ball, things are a little bit more concrete there. I mean, there are going to be some positions for battle, but one of the Sams I would like to mention is TJ Guy. I think he's going to be next up in that, he's going to be a name that you're going to start hearing next year, really break through, because defensive line wise, Mason Graham's going to be there. Kenneth Graham's going to be there. We got Derek Moore back and Josiah Stewart. So there's nothing too new. Zeke Berry, I would agree with that. But the thing about Zeke Berry is he's going to be playing behind Rod Moore and Makari Page, right? So it's going to be a similar system to like Keon Saab started to shine towards the end of the year. And we just saw him unfortunately transfer to Georgia, Alabama. But, I think you could see Zeke Berry begin to get more playing time in a Keon Saab role. But the corner to watch is Jair Hill. Because we don't have so our second cornerback spot is up for grabs right now. We don't have someone opposite of Will. Mike Sanders still is gone, so the nickel corner is going to be in question too. And I do think Jaden McBurrows is going to handle that. But I think the name to watch for the outside corner position is either going to be DJ Waller or Jair Hill. But Jair Hill has the most upside, in my opinion.
Good stuff, TJ. I love the personal breakdowns because I float around to all these different shows, all these different teams, and I get guys on like you, and then I can soak up the personnel and try to catch up with everything that's going on at Michigan. I gave myself a little bit of a test on air a few weeks ago where I went to a site called Sporkle, and you can look up different quizzes, different tests, and they had a Michigan football roster for 2023, and I thought, I'm going to look like a fool if I don't perform pretty well filling in these names live on air. But I hit on 41. I got 41 players.
Oh, 41 like out of the 85 or 41 starters?
41 out of the whatever on the roster.
Okay.
I had to type in everybody I could think of.
All right. That's cool.
Quite a little bit better 3 months ago than I did today, but I tend to forget some guys. But yeah.